You know, there's a specific kind of silence that happens right after something terrible takes place. It's not peaceful. It's heavy, like the air right before a tornado touches down. I felt that silence in the parking lot of a frantic grocery store in Oakbridge, Washington. On a Tuesday afternoon, the rain had just stopped that relentless Pacific Northwest drizzle that turns everything into a gray soup, and I was standing there, 7 months pregnant, wearing a beige trench coat that I'd saved up for months to buy. And I was dripping with brown, oily, freezing mud. Let me back up a second, because to understand why I didn't scream, why I didn't cry, and why I didn't run, you have to understand the man sitting in the lifted black truck 10 feet away from me. That was Gavin Mercer, my ex-husband, the king of Oakbridge construction, the man who spent 5 years telling me I was worthless, that I was lucky he looked in my direction, that I'd never amount to anything more than the help. He was idling there in his massive truck, the engine rumbling like an angry beast, and sitting next to him was his new fiancée, Crystal. She was young, blonde, and laughing so hard I could see her head thrown back against the headrest. "Look at you, Maya," Gavin yelled out the window, his voice dripping with that fake pity that always made my skin crawl. "Still shopping at the discount mart? I thought you'd have landed some welfare check by now." I just tightened my grip on my grocery bags. I wanted to say something. I wanted to tell him that I wasn't on welfare, that I was happy, that I was finally breathing fresh air after suffocating in his house for half a decade. But I knew Gavin. He didn't want a conversation. He wanted an audience. He wanted to remind me of my place. "I'm just getting food, Gavin," I said, my voice steadier than my hands. "Please, just go. Please, just go," he mocked, pitching his voice high. Then his eyes dropped to my belly. The smile fell off his face like it had been slapped off. "Pregnant? Seriously? Who's the lucky loser? Some guy from the housing projects. I bet he can't even afford to buy you an umbrella." He revved the engine. There was a pothole right between us, a massive crater filled with murky rainwater, and runoff from the construction site next door. A site, ironically, that his company was managing. "You know, you look dirty, Maya," he sneered. "Let me help you with that." He didn't just tap the gas. He floored it. The tires spun, catching the water with violent precision. It wasn't a splash. It was a wave. A wall of freezing, gritty filth hit me. It coated my hair, my face, my coat, and soaked through to the shirt stretching over my belly. I gasped, the cold shock stealing the air from my lungs. Gavin slowed down just enough to look back. "That's better," he yelled. "Now you look like where you came from." Crystal waved a little manicured hand. "Bye-bye, honey." And then they were gone, leaving me standing there while people stared. A security guard looked over, shook his head, and went back to checking his phone. Nobody helped. Nobody ever helps when it's Gavin Mercer, because in this town, Gavin is the golden boy. He builds the libraries, he sponsors the little league teams, and he has the sheriff on speed dial. But here is what Gavin didn't know. He thought he was splashing his poor, struggling ex-wife who was barely scraping by as a freelance botanist. He had no idea who I went home to. He had no idea that the lucky loser he made fun of was a man who could buy and sell. Gavin's entire existence before breakfast, I got into my 4-year-old Honda Civic. I didn't turn the heater on because I didn't want the smell of the mud to bake into the upholstery. I just drove. I drove past the flashy car dealerships, past the gated communities where I used to live with Gavin, and headed toward the coast, up a winding private road that isn't on the GPS. I pulled up to the house. It wasn't a mansion not the way Gavin defines mansions, with gold pillars and gaudy statues. It was a modern, glass-handwood masterpiece hidden in the trees, overlooking the ocean. Quiet luxury, the kind of wealth that whispers. I walked inside, dripping on the slate floor. "Maya?" The voice came from the study. Elias walked out. My husband. He's 42, with salt and pepper hair and eyes that miss absolutely nothing. Elias is a venture capitalist, a silent investor in half the tech startups in Seattle. But around here, people just think he's a reclusive writer because he drives an old Volvo and wears flannel shirts. We like it that way. Privacy is our luxury. He stopped dead when he saw me. The book he was holding hit the floor. He didn't say a word. He just crossed the room in 3 strides. He didn't care about the mud. He wrapped his arms around me, pulling me close, ruining his cashmere sweater without a second thought. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. "Is the baby okay?" "We're fine," I whispered, finally letting the tears fall. They cut warm tracks through the mud on my cheeks. It was Gavin. At the market, my jaw dropped. "You're his landlord?" "I am." And I just remembered something very interesting about his lease agreement. It has a morality clause and a strict environmental compliance section regarding the storage of hazardous materials. Elias put the phone to his ear. "Hello, Marcus. Yes, it's Elias. I need you to pull the file on Mercer Construction." "Yes, the tenant in Oakbridge. I want a full audit, forensic accounting, environmental impact, permit history, everything, tonight. And higher up high. I want to know where every dime of his charitable donations is actually going." He hung up and looked at me. "Go take a hot shower, my love. By tomorrow morning. Gavin is going to wish he had just driven past you." I slept fitfully that night. I kept hearing the revving of that engine. But when I woke up, the house was filled with the smell of coffee and intensity. The dining room table was covered in paperwork. Elias had been up all night. There were 2 other men in the room, men in suits I didn't recognize. "Maya," Elias said, standing up. "This is Mr. Sterling and Mr. Cross. They're forensic accountants." "Forensic?" I asked, tightening my robe. "Is it that serious?" "It's worse than we thought," Mr. Sterling said. He looked like a librarian who enjoyed catching people with overdue books. "Your ex-husband isn't just a bully, Mrs. Vance. He's a thief. We've been looking at the public records and cross-referencing them with the bank statements from the property management firm. He's been cooking the books on city contracts, using substandard materials for the new school gymnasium and pocketing. The difference, and that's not all," Elias added, sliding a photo across the table. "He's been dumping chemical runoff into the creek behind the industrial park to save on disposal fees. My industrial park," my stomach turned. "That creek feeds into the local reservoir." "Exactly," Elias said, "which makes this a federal issue. The EPA doesn't care who your golf buddies are." "So what do we do?" I asked. "We wait," Elias said. "Gavin has a big gala tonight, doesn't he? The Builder of the Year awards." I nodded. "He's been bragging about it for months on social media." "Perfect," Elias said. "I think it's time we attended." I hesitated. "Elias, I can't go there. He'll humiliate me again. He'll make a scene." "He won't," Elias said, walking over and taking my hands. "Because this time, you're not walking in as his victim. You're walking in as the wife of the man who owns the ground he walks on. And we aren't going there to fight him. We're going there to watch him fall." The day dragged on. I was anxious, my heart fluttering every time I thought about seeing Gavin again. But Elias was a rock. He bought me a dress and emerald green silk gown that fit my baby bump perfectly. He put on a tuxedo. He looked like James Bond, if James Bond was angry and protecting his family. We drove to the country club in Elias's vintage Aston Martin, not my Honda. When we pulled up, the valet's eyes almost popped out of his head. This was a Ford and Chevy town. We walked into the ballroom. It was packed. The local elite, the mayor, the sheriff, they were all there, drinking cheap champagne and patting each other on the back. And there, in the center of it all, was Gavin. He was wearing a white tuxedo jacket, tacky as always, and holding court. Crystal was hanging off his arm, looking bored. When Gavin saw me, he froze mid-laugh. He squinted, like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Then he saw Elias. He didn't know who Elias was, but he recognized the money. You can smell it. The cut of the suit, the way Elias held himself. Gavin excused himself and beelined for us. He couldn't help himself. He had to mark his territory. Well, Gavin boomed, drawing eyes. "If it isn't Maya, I didn't know they let just anyone in here. Did you sneak in through the kitchen?" He looked at Elias, sizing him up. "And whose?" "This, your Uber driver." Elias didn't blink. He didn't even look at Gavin. He looked around the room. "Bored?" "Maya, is this the man you told me about? The one with the mud fetish?" Gavin bristled. His face went red. "Excuse me, I'm Gavin Mercer. I run this town, and you are." Elias Vance, my husband said softly. Gavin laughed. Vance, never heard of you. You must be new. Let me give you some advice, pal. You're picking up my scraps. This one, he pointed a thumb at me, is damaged goods. The room went quiet. People were watching. The sheriff was inching closer, drink in hand, ready to back up his buddy Gavin. Damaged. Elias repeated, tasting the word. Interesting choice of words. Speaking of damaged, Gavin, how is the foundation on that new gym? We took a look at the stress tests this morning. Concrete mixture seems a little thin. Gavin's face went pale. What are you talking about? And the creek behind your yard, Elias continued, raising his voice just enough so the mayor could hear. The toxicity levels are off the charts. You really should pay for proper disposal, instead of piping it into the water table. You're crazy. Gavin stammered, looking around. Security, get this clown out of here. I wouldn't do that, Elias said, reaching into his jacket pocket. Gavin flinched, thinking it was a weapon. Elias pulled out a folded piece of paper. This is an eviction. Notice, Gavin, effective immediately. You have 24 hours to vacate High Ridge Industrial Park. Gavin laughed, but it sounded like a dying engine. You can't evict me. I have a lease with High Ridge Holdings. I know the owner, do you? Elias stepped closer, towering over him. Because I am High Ridge Holdings. I own the land. I own your office. I own the dirt you park your trucks on. And you are in breach of contract on about 40 different counts. Gavin looked at me. He looked at Elias. The realization hit him like a freight train. The lucky loser. The nobody. You, Gavin whispered. You married him. I did, I said, stepping forward. My voice wasn't shaking. This time, and he didn't have to buy me. He just treats me like a human being. Something you never figured out how to do. This is Bull's *****. Gavin shouted, losing control. Sheriff, arrest these people for trespassing. Harassment. The sheriff stepped forward, looking uncertain. He looked at Gavin, then at Elias. Sheriff. Elias said calmly. It was the quiet kind of chaos that happens when serious people enter a room. 6 men and women in windbreakers that said FBI and EPA on the back walked in. They didn't look like they were there for the hors d'oeuvres. The music stopped. The DJ, a kid who looked about 19, cut the sound so fast you could hear the record scratch. Leading the pack was a woman with a badge on her belt and a look that said she hadn't slept in a week and blamed Gavin for it. She walked right up to the circle we were standing in. Gavin Mercer, she asked. Gavin looked like a trapped animal. He looked at the sheriff, but the sheriff was currently inspecting the pattern on the carpet, trying to make himself invisible. He looked at Crystal, but she had already taken 3 steps back, distancing herself from the blast radius. Who's asking? Gavin tried to muster some of that old arrogance, but it cracked in the middle. Special Agent Miller, FBI, she said, and this is Agent Chen from the EPA. We have a warrant for your arrest and a search warrant for your premises regarding the dumping of hazardous materials and federal contract fraud. Fraud, Gavin sputtered. This is a misunderstanding. My ex-wife, she put you up to this. She's crazy. She's jealous. He pointed a shaking finger at me. She's trying to frame me because I left her. Agent Miller didn't even look at me. Mr. Mercer, we've been monitoring your suspicious wire transfers for 6 months. We just needed the physical evidence of the environmental violations to move. Your landlord provided that this morning. She looked at Elias and gave a curt nod. Elias nodded back. Cuff him, Miller said. No, you can't do this. Gavin screamed as they grabbed his arms. He wrestled, knocking over a tray of champagne flutes. Glass shattered everywhere. Sparkling under the chandeliers. Do you know who I am? I'm the builder of the year. You have the right to remain silent. An agent droned as he clicked the metal cuffs onto Gavin's wrists. Anything you say can and will be used against you. As they dragged him out, Gavin twisted his neck around to look at me. His face was a mask of pure shock. He wasn't looking at me with hate anymore. He was looking at me with confusion. He couldn't process it. How could the woman he splashed with mud, the woman he threw away like garbage, be the architect of his destruction? Maya, he screamed, desperation creeping in. Maya, tell them it's a mistake. We're family. I'm the father of your— Wait, he looked at my belly. You didn't, is that— He never finished the sentence. The agents shoved him through the double doors, and he was gone. The room was dead silent. 200 of Oakbridge's finest were staring at us. Crystal was crying near the buffet, frantically texting someone on her phone, probably a lawyer or a new boyfriend. Elias adjusted his cufflinks, looking completely unbothered. He turned to me and offered his arm. Shall we? He asked. I believe the air in here has suddenly become very stale. We shall, I said. We walked out, not sneaking out the back. We walked right down the center aisle. And you know what? The people who used to look through me, the people who used to snicker when Gavin made fun of my thrift store clothes, they parted like the Red Sea. I saw respect in their eyes. Or maybe it was fear. Honestly, after years of being treated like dirt, I didn't care which one it was. We got into the Aston Martin. Elias started the engine, and the low growl vibrated through the seats. Are you hungry? He asked, as casual as if we'd just left a movie. Starving, I admitted. Being vindicated really works up an appetite. We went to a 24-hour diner on the edge of town, the kind of place Gavin wouldn't be caught dead in. We ate pancakes and greasy bacon, still wearing a tuxedo and a silk gown. We laughed until I cried, releasing 4 years of tension, 4 years of holding my breath. The aftermath was swift and brutal. With the FBI raid, Gavin's assets were frozen. The investigation revealed that he hadn't just been cheating the city. He had been skimming from his own investors. His company folded within a week. High Ridge Holdings, Elias's company, took possession of the industrial park. Elias didn't keep it, though. He donated the land to the city, with a stipulated grant to clean up the creek and turn the property into a community green space and botanical garden. He put me in charge of the design. As for Gavin, the bail was set at $3 million, since his assets were frozen and his friends, like the sheriff and the mayor, were busy trying to save their own skins. He sat in county jail for months awaiting trial. I saw him one last time. It was the day of his arraignment. I didn't have to go, but I needed closure. I sat in the back row. When they brought him in, he looked small. He wasn't wearing his fancy suits. He was in an orange jumpsuit that washed out his complexion. He looked tired, defeated. When he saw me, he didn't sneer. He didn't shout. He just looked down at the table. He looked ashamed. And in that moment, I realized something profound. He wasn't a monster. Monsters are powerful.